But when you measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevation profiles like that. I'm a spitting flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken. We just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat earth king of rhyme.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by, wow, there's a whole bunch of you. Eli, Click OK, Len, Neil, Refracted Curvature, Arthur B. Flat, Adam, and a whole bunch of people in the Flipside Discord server. So, welcome one and all.
Now that's proper representation.
Say again, Neil?
Good afternoon.
Hello, Len. What did you say about representation, Neil?
I said, now this is the proper representation. A nice full panel on both sides.
Oh, Neil's knocking the panel that didn't turn up on a couple of the other occasions. Just for the record, there is absolutely no obligation whatsoever for any of you on the panel or in the Discord server to be here to frequent me and my live show at the time I go live. If it was the case, and it has been once or twice, that I've started a live show with absolutely no guests whatsoever, then so be it. The very first live stream I did was me and my wife trying to figure out how to use what was then called Hangouts on Air, a Google Plus system where you could broadcast via YouTube with their internal software being the actual catalyst to get the material out live on YouTube. And when we broadcast and started talking about quite a lot of Feasts of Nonsense subjects like NASA, as we were talking about in the pre-show, we had one guest join, not on the panel, in the audience, one person, Robin Poe. Now, she eventually became a guest on the show called Flat Earth UK, where I interviewed people who were interested in the subject of Earth being flat, with my first question on 99% of those shows being, how did you, my guest, find out Earth is flat? And I'd generally get an answer that was actually revolving around how they were on a conspiratorial vibe when they came across the subject of flat Earth, and it made sense to them. Ultimately, 12 years down the line, and as was discussed in the pre-show, we're now pointing out how inconsequential it is that we, as a conspiratorial group, are set in opposition to overgrown 12-year-old beta and gamma boys, for the most part, who want to believe in sky vacuums and rockets entering them when they whistle past how flat Earth must be measured in order to create a ball. And likewise, in juxtaposition, you have anti-globers labelled flat earthers who tell you how globe-shaped it isn't when we see too far. Too far for what? The mathematics of an automatically assumed to be globe, you say, is wrong? That's not flat Earth. Flat Earth is dealt with by the map makers, the surveyors, the people who are using celestial navigation, the people creating the maps or building on Earth's surface level, the people who derived clever methodology to get the average of the sea level so you could use it as a master reference to describe all measurements and deviations from said level in a measurement of Earth's surface. It's flat, regardless of whether or not it's been successfully infiltrated by conspiratards to also, like the Gamma and Beta 12-year-olds, whistle straight past how flat Earth must be measured in order to argue about how globe-shaped it isn't when we see too far. What's too far? Oh, it'd be a distance, linear and horizontal, like on the scales of maps, that you'll have to ignore so you can have a little argument with some overgrown 12-year-old who's utterly inconsequential and, generally speaking, a low-value male in society, unpleasant to be around, and is offended that you're challenging his oh-so-valuable globe Earth information that he held so dear and most normal people saw as completely lacking in value, boring, and not worth investing their time in. But here we are, conspiratards versus dweebs, arguing about something that is inconsequential when it actually comes down to the nitty-gritty of Earth measurements. They're flat. Nothing we did had any consequence on any of it. That's me on the conspiratorial vibe that I found my way to flat Earth through, and our opposing so-called side that see value in believing in sky vacuums with rockets travelling in them, derived from orbital motion that had a flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle to produce it. My hope moving forward is that there'll be more and more normies coming to the subject. Normies, the ones that I've just described as finding the heliocentric information boring, haven't invested in the fart-sniffing nonsensical garbage that has no practical application called heliocentrism. It doesn't have any real use. Most people recognise that instantly and therefore don't invest their precious time that they're very limited in the unbelievably dull information these beta and gamma 12-year-olds have found value in. But they will understand implicitly, with enough time, how surface level is measured. Most people have got a vague comprehension of how a map works. Most people have got a vague comprehension about how a scale works with miles on said map. And most people have got at least some idea of how a compass gives them two-dimensional directionality. All of your navigation systems are utilising flat Earth measurements. Same goes for any building principles. When you level your terrain, you're levelling it and acquiring its altitude with respect to a master reference, the average of the sea level. Mean sea level dictates your altitude anywhere on the surface of an Earth that's already been measured. Any of you can look up right now in the audience how high you are off sea level. And it wouldn't matter if you're 1,000 miles inland. The deviation from the horizontal plane of reference is only going to be given you in feet. That's it. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny little deviation from the overall flat topology that we've got with a measured reference called sea level. Now, most people hear sea level, normies, not the deeply unpleasant people that would suggest I should have my kids taken off me, my channel should be shut down, I should jump off a tall building or have my balls cut off. Not those deeply unpleasant, fart-sniffing, grown-up 12-year-olds who value their sky vacuums for their rockets. Normal people understand height with reference to an plane. That's height above sea level in feet. Not the ludicrous derivation that would also require a surface level to infer when you suggest the sphericity to the surface level we've measured flat, built on flat, flown across flat, traversed, mapped and charted flat, utilised elevation angles with respect to the stars from a flat plane, derived dip measurements, that's depression angles from a parallel eye level. All of these things are basic things that any normal man can understand. If I can rattle them off as a perceived to be dumb flat earther in one or two sentences, I absolutely assure you, normal Joe public can understand how flat Earth is measured. Most people don't need a fart-sniffing anti-flat earther telling them how flat a mile is. Most people have got a map somewhere in their house and understand how a scale works without being told that, yeah, I mean, of course we've measured it all flat. Doesn't mean it is. My last chapter is about Robin Poe. It was one of the last things I read, so having sent it off to the publisher, I read through it once or twice and found a couple of spelling errors. The most recent time I read through it, there was one spelling error that I found. Now, that's not to say that there isn't more in there, I just haven't spotted them if there are any when you buy the book and go, ha-ha, you've spelt this word wrong. Therefore, Earth's not measured flat, sea level's bending. I mean, you can do that too, that's fine, as long as you purchase a copy. But in the last chapter, I'm specifically detailing the redundancy found within the argumentation when we arrived here 12 years ago. Robin Poe described how Earth curve wasn't obscuring her view when looking to a transceiver 110 miles away. Now, what do I hear? 110 miles? Okay, that's a flat Earth horizontal linear distance in miles then. So why do we need the story about Earth curve not being in the way of the transmission? We don't. We've got a flat measured distance in miles. If you're going to reference it, you're going to need to accept our flat Earth must and can only be measured. What's that? We've got hills and valleys, therefore it's not flat. Yeah, they're measured with respect to the sea level too. Their deviation given in feet, so that you can look up how high you are perpendicular to a plane of reference called sea level. And it's only deviating in hundreds, at best thousands of feet. Teeny tiny little deviations from the overall flat Earth that we've averaged with sea level. As I said at the top of this show, none of what we have done on the other side of this discussion, on the fart-sniffing now anti-globe side, that seem to want to lord it over next normal man who didn't see the value in learning about boring crap called heliocentrism that had no practical application for them in their real world. But there's certain flat earthers, in name only, that want to lord it over average Joe because he didn't see the value invested in heliocentrism. Well, that same person can really easily understand how flat a mile is, how two-dimensional south is, how a map works, how all of the heights from sea level where you are in the world don't require much cognitive processing. It's not a heavy investment to understand height. It's not. Perpendicularity might be a long word, but it's a very simple axiom to understand. 90 degrees to surface level, like you'd measure altitude. You can get into the more complex aspects of navigation if you're going to go out on a boat and navigate. But the reality is this entire arena is populated with fart-sniffing numpties that don't do anything with Earth. The reason they could whistle past how flat Earth was being measured in the first place is because they're not doing anything with it. Same goes for the anti-flat earthers. What's Simon Dan used in practical terms when it comes to Earth measurements? I mean, notwithstanding the fact that his Earth measurements 1,000 times over were of flat Earth elevation angles to the sun, but he didn't do anything with them. Nothing he did had any bearing on anybody's lives. We already knew how to measure elevation angles. We already had a surface level requirement in prerequisite to measure them. We already knew the altitude that each and every one of them was measured because the ground's already been surveyed. We know how high you watching right now are off sea level. I think arguing about it as a fart-sniffing YouTuber makes any difference. No. But the guy who goes out on his boat and learns how to navigate with the stars on a map with flat, linear miles, you're reliant on having been measured already. They weren't measured by YouTubers. They weren't measured by me. I am inconsequential when it comes to this stuff too. I'm just a YouTuber. But like any normal person, I can understand implicitly how flat all Earth measurements are without any exception. Go on, whoever's desperate to get through with their mic opening. Is it you, Arthur? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just remembered Neil talking about the same thing yesterday, and I'm not sure, I forget the word that he used, but he was saying that we have made so much progress or we have grown so much in the past 8 to 10 years that today we can find flat earth prerequisites in almost every alternate sentence that Neil deGrasse Tyson says. So instead of putting it that way, that we have made a lot of progress, I would like to put it in the same way that you did, that it is just like going back to basics and realizing the fundamentals of the whole thing, and the realization that we have been whistling past the graveyard forever. No need to do that any longer.
That's a
You can
members
just
only video if you
point
want to
out
watch
the
that.
dancing bear.
If
Yeah.
you want to join as a member, you can see exactly what Arthur's talking about, which is now produced and edited in terms of me pointing out that Neil deGrasse Tyson fundamentally requires Earth to be measured flat to make his assertions that boats fall over a horizon. Now, if that sounds familiar to, by the way, I wish I'd put this into yesterday's edited video. Why is it familiar? Well, because there's an assertion that was put to us in the Feast of Nonsense rhetoric that whistle past flat Earth measurements of distance and altitude, that boats fall over the edge of a flat plane, and how ludicrous that would be. Meanwhile, you've got your rhetoric that requires surface level measurements for altitude, hold true with a sea level perpendicular and parallel to eye level, and distances that are horizontal and linear being applicable after the fact. Neil deGrasse Tyson requires every single one of those axioms hold true for his assertion that boats fall over the horizon. That's you fart-sniffing 12-year-old boys that fantasise about sky vacuums with rockets in them to take pictures from a place akin to Narnia. That's for you. You and your boats you think fall over a horizon that's been derived from flat Earth measurements of distance and altitude. What's that? The surface level curves? No, your maths relies on having a parallel eye level to the surface level. So no, the surface level doesn't bend. Or your maths that you fantasise a ball into existence with fail. Now me, I'm pointing out how Neil deGrasse Tyson, lest he be deemed utterly stupid, must understand how flat Earth gets measured, because he disclaims it when he describes the distance, and infers Earth curve geometry, that's Earth measurement, that's utilising, as it's labelled in the maths, surface level, and height perpendicular to surface level, eye level, parallel with the surface level. Every single flat Earth prerequisite that Neil deGrasse Tyson requires Earth be measured as a flat plane, so he can suggest, with no practical application, that boats are falling over the horizon. Yeah, how many times has that saved anybody's life at sea? Yeah, never. There's never been a useful need to suggest that boats are falling over the horizon. That's stupid nonsense for fart-sniffing 12-year-olds. Meanwhile, measuring Earth with a parallel plane to the eye level when you use a sextant to measure an angle to a star will save your life at sea. It's got a very practical application when it comes to the preordained flat Earth prerequisites that are used in every single measurement of Earth's surface ever, including Tyson's use of them to infer that there's a spherical surface below the surface level, inferred with a horizontal linear distance, and a height measured perpendicular to a sea level measurement that we took from Earth and its surface in what he called geometry. That'd be Earth measurements. So when we go and have a little look at Tyson's measurements, they're all flat, just like Earth is measured by everybody. Now that's what we can retrospectively look at 8 years down the line since his video that we covered yesterday was made. But as Flat Earthers pointed out, all roads lead to flat Earth measurements, and there are no exceptions.
Hold on a second. You didn't have that knowledge when you had that poll person. One person showed up when you went live, right?
No, so we
As
talked
you
about...
go on for years and years and years, you grow in a grace and knowledge of the subject that you are going through, that you're part of. And that's all I meant by that. I mean, yeah, now we know. We could look at the freaking anything Neil deGrasse Tyson does, and boom, we could point out the dancing bear, the flat Earth right there. But it's also a growth that we don't entertain, like I told you the other day when I went in the server and I heard them mocking a guy that did not know much about heliocentrism. And it's kind of like dirty to me. Like, why are you mocking the poor guy? All right, so you know how fast the Earth is spinning. Oh, really? So the Earth is spinning. So you think by saying all of these things, you're superior, but all you're doing is keeping the globe alive. So, I mean, I think we've grown in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a felt desire to brace against the claims of heliocentrism, which required both the hippies and the fart-sniffing dweebs invest cognitively in globe information. Again, notwithstanding that they'd have to whistle past every flat earth measurement that's creating those globe understandings from flat earthers and the decriance of a normie who doesn't have an exemplary understanding of this cognitively expensive information of heliocentrism. Those people are far more inclined to recognise the reality of how Earth is actually measured because it's not cognitively expensive. Yeah, miles are flat. That's not up for debate. That's a fact. That's what they are. It's a linear distance. When you're selling land, you sell it by the square foot. That's how you square the flat linear distances that your land will be measured with. This is one of the most basic fundamental premises that selling land can only adhere to. Now, when it comes to this selling of land and buying of areas that are described squared with the linear distances described in kilometres or miles, these are facts that money might be involved with when you're buying things. So it's really basic. It's really easy to understand. The ground that you're buying has been measured, sir. Yes, we know exactly how much you'll pay for. How much? Oh, well, it's this number of square yards. Yeah? That's when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of money. What's that? Anti-flat earther, you say boats fall over the horizon. How can I monetize that? Can I buy it by the pound? Will it save my life at sea? Look, that boat looks like it's going over the horizon. Which one? I can't see anything. Yeah, get your telescope out, because hashtag shit shrinks. It's really small.
Nathan, that's pretty good. You're right. They sell property and land by the square, but not by the arc foot. Paying attention, people?
Yeah, you could buy an entire country and you'd expect the country that's selling it you, if you're buying an island or something, to have mapped it out, surveyed it, and then give you an exact value to have a dollar amount attached to it. Now, when it comes to stuff like buying and selling, property, land, areas, people understand this basic principle of Earth being flat to measure it. Now, you could turn around and say, yeah, but it doesn't mean it is. Oh, really? Well, do you want to tell me where that's useful? Other than brainwashing 12-year-old beaters? It ain't. It's only useful for you to believe you're on a curved surface that we're measuring flat when we're actually dealing with money. You can believe that surface is curved, 8 inches per flat Earth linear mile squared. So even your inference that there's a curve to Earth's surface requires we have a measured flat distance in miles to derive a squared function from 8 inches per flat linear horizontal mile squared. That's a flat Earth measurement that you'll start with to infer your sphericity. It's pathetic. Like I say, it's not got a practical application. Deriving curve from flat Earth measurements of miles or kilometres doesn't have any practical use. It's not going to make you any money. That's why the normie who came into the server Neil was talking about didn't know much about heliocentrism. He's a normie. Yeah, a rational person. Normal. Doesn't see any value investing in shit that has no useful practical application. That guy who's going out on a boat will learn how to measure Earth flat with angles so he doesn't die. But you fart sniffers thinking that boats are falling over your horizons, you won't ever give me a practical use for that. It's never made anybody a dime. Well, maybe Neil deGrasse Tyson for lying to you with it. Maybe he made money from it. Go on.
Somebody trying to get in?
I thought I had somebody trying to get in. Clearly not.
Well, there's somebody in chat that says, number one proof of flat Earth is, how about everything?
Measurements. If you want to know, if you're asking in sincerity, what's the number one proof of a flat Earth? Number one, that's an error in terms of your phraseology, because you're suggesting it requires proof. No, it doesn't. It's measured flat by everybody who ever measures Earth ever without exception. Now, you can tell me, no, the miles that we're going to square when I buy this land to farm on, they're not square miles. Yeah, they are. It's just a fact. Now, nobody who's selling land gets into the wrangle-dangle about whether or not it's sphere-shaped. They just sell their square miles to the next man so he can farm that land. That's when people are dealing with the grown-up stuff like measurements of the surface. How high is this land? Will it drain well? How much relief do we have for the rain to run off the land? Oh, we can measure and survey the relief. How do we do that? Oh, well, we take the horizontal linear miles. That aren't a proof of flat Earth. It's just Earth being measured flat. Nobody's using this information to prove a flat Earth. They're just asking how much rain will run off their land that they're buying by the square mile in the relief measurements from the surveys that measure the altitude with respect to the sea level that's been measured. These are all measurements used in the very real business of buying and selling land. People want to know about relief. They want to know if their land will get flooded, like land that has water at rest pooling over vast areas of it. Yeah, that's going to be solved by how much relief is surveyed with respect to the horizontal miles. Now, these are things that people, like I say, will be dealing with money with, so they're not complex. They need to be made nice and simple. What's that? They're only made simple because it's not flat? Oh, really, 12-year-old fart-sniffing beta? Do you want to tell me where that gets monetised? Maybe you can tell me how useful boats going over the horizon is to your average mariner who's measuring Earth flat with elevation angles so he doesn't die. Yeah. You can believe that your fart-sniffing sphere inference after the flat Earth measurements has some value. It doesn't. And most normal people moving forward will start to recognise that. Hopefully people will share my book around where I make it absolutely explicitly clear how the process of cognition through flat Earth exploration only leads you to one conclusion at the end of it. Wouldn't matter if you'd read the book, Earth would have been measured flat anyway. Speaking of which, it can't be more than a couple of more days before my publisher gets in touch with me and said it's live. As I said yesterday, it'll be a bit of an anticlimax initially when the book goes live. I'll just be telling you on one of the live shows and pointing you in the direction of the link. So there's not going to be some massive party. There's going to be no arrows fired into the air lighting bowls or anything, if you know what I mean.
Is it hard copy or online only?
Initially, it'll be online only.
Oh, you got to put it out.
Yes, I have. It's called Measured Flat.
Oh, there was some lady, Betty, that said Nate, it was never your book. Isn't that funny?
Oh, right, yeah, because this woman called Betty, this is a woman with big feet who can't hold down a boyfriend, was used in substitution of a story about me and Flat Earth debate housekeeping questions that was produced in the form of a fifth draft under my supervision in my Hangouts with two people who had offered me help so I could help feed my family. Those two people thieved my fifth draft that was produced in my company, in my Hangouts, under my supervision, and had her name and her story about how she can't keep a man in place of my story. So you're saying that woman who can't hold down a man says that there was no book? Yeah, there was. I was offered help with it by the people who changed my name to your name, Betty. Yeah? You've been superimposed on top of stolen material that was about me. You are the porno version of my story, Betty. That's all you are. Yeah? I'm the Steven Spielberg film. You're the Steven Spielbergo porno version that a couple of editors stole, repurposed, and slapped your name on the top of. Now, you can delude yourself that your story was what they were producing in my hangouts under my supervision whilst producing a fifth draft that they stole. But in reality, Betty, your story's been told by thieves and is a thin veneer over the top of my story, which is what people actually want to read about story. Not a story about how you can't hold down a man. They'll go and watch a whole bunch of YouTubers like Taylor the Fiend. Shout out to Taylor the Fiend. If you want to read about stories about women like Betty who can't hold down a man and become spinsters as their ovaries dry up, then you can go and watch Taylor the Fiend talk about women hitting the wall. Now, if you want that interdispersed with a story about housekeeping questions, you can go and buy the Steven Spielbergo porno version of my story, stolen by two upstart editors. You can do that. No amount of telling yourself that your story's important, Betty, will alter how thin a veneer your name will go down in history as. Betty the spinster with her big feet who can't hold down a man isn't going to capture people's imagination. I absolutely assure you. But there's no amount of time that will dissolve the theft that took place. Everybody knows what happened to my fifth draft. No matter suggesting that there was 2 books as my book was being stolen from me will alter the reality of what take place in my company. Describing my story. It's not your story, Betty. Your story is about not being able to hold down a man, and it's a common story of women who go and buy cats after failing to reproduce because they can't hold down a man.
I don't know how that's possible in 2026. There's plenty of simps out there. How can you not hold a man?
Well, you have to ask her, but that's how the book starts. Anyway, but could it be that because she seems like says she's a Christian woman, so if you're a Christian, you should know, you should have a moral compass. We all have a moral compass, but when you profess to be a Christian, it should be fine-tuned, no? So could it be that she was deceived as to, that the people that were editing your book, because they were taking stuff from their website, that it's now their book?
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Majority of the people who claim they're Christians, especially on the internet, they're usually atheists.
No, that's not true. How would you validate that?
Well, you can, but a lot of people say they're Christian, but they don't really do anything a Christian would do.
They could appear to be atheist. What are you saying, by their conduct? Well, let's remember that even though you profess to be a Christian, doesn't make you perfect. So, yeah, Christians do make mistakes. Christians do make errors, and Christians do sin. We all sin. But my point is, your moral compass should be fine-tuned. And you should be fine-tuned enough to call out theft when you see a theft. Not have somebody tell you their side of a story when there is no side. So that's my only point. But yeah, I can't wait for the book. So hopefully it'll be sometime in the next week.
I would hope so. Sorry, I missed most of that. UPS guy turned up to pick up the panel that I've taken off the wall behind me and reboxed in the box that came with the one that I've just got. So I didn't actually hear most of what you've just said. So,
well, what I was saying is she could have been deceived because, people come and they make statements like, because the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan and, the Doors were on Ed Sullivan, and so was Buddy Holly and the Crickets. But does that make Buddy Holly's song, Peggy Sue, and the Beatles song, She Loves You, and the Doors song, Light My Fire, Ed Sullivan's intellectual property? So when there's told things like that, they're very easily deceived. Now, you should be able to cut right through that bullshit and realize what's going on. It is such a horrible comparison. but this is what they're getting. So,
I mean, I don't care. Like I say, it's only when you've thieved something that you need to come up with comparisons and justifications for why material's in your possession. You won't ever hear me doing that, right? There's never going to be a circumstance where I have to justify my own existence and my story within housekeeping questions, flat earth debate, the 12 years I've spent coming to the conclusion that earth is measured flat. I'm not going to explain why I've acquired that story. It's just my story. But if you steal someone's story and repurpose it and then put a thin veneer about some big-footed woman who's got cats and can't hold down a man on top of it, then you're going to spend most of your time justifying out, no, this is definitely ours. Is it? I mean, why would you be justifying it? If it was yours, you wouldn't need to justify thieving it. Now you are, and you always will. The people who've stolen from me will always have tarnished goods for sale. There's nothing that's going to ever change that. You think justifying it helps? No, it's digging a grave that's even bigger and wider with every time you attempt to justify how you've purloined my material. That's all you've done. Now, in the meantime, I've had to go through the same process again, over and over again. Originally, it was 5 drafts by the time it was being stolen. It's now up to 9 drafts because I had to start essentially from fresh. Now, that was no bad thing because I've incorporated in the rhetoric that we're currently talking about at the top of this live show. That's Earth being measured flat in all circumstances, without exception, including but not limited to ball faith utilising said flat prerequisites to create the ball width. Now, am I justifying how I've got this information when I detail it concisely? No, there's no need to. Now, there's plenty of people out there that are excited to read about the journey through flat Earth. And as I say, if you want to learn about women who end up with cats, go and watch Taylor the Fiend.
I think Len wanted to say something.
Yeah, Glenn.
A band performing on a show. Yeah, the show's not going to get the copyright to the song, but they own the copyright of that performance. And unless there's contracts made, you know, it belongs to the show. But
Of course.
You lost your Len.
No, he's saying if you produce, he's just listening to your comparison. I don't understand how the comparison's being used, but I understood Len's juxtaposition, which is to say, if you've got the Ed Sullivan show and it's got the Beatles on it, it's still the Ed Sullivan show with the Beatles on it. Like, what? So what? Does that mean that suddenly that the Beatles get the revenue stream from the Ed Sullivan show? No, of course not. That's utterly ludicrous.
No, they're claiming the songs that they wrote because they were in Ed Sullivan's room. Well, number one, let me break it down. They didn't write the song in Ed Sullivan's room. Okay, that's number one. They performed it there. Number two, another horrible comparison was freaking Shakespeare rented his place. So does that make Romeo and Juliet the intellectual property of the landlord? No, because you sign a lease and now that is your apartment until you move out. So whatever you do in there is your intellectual property. Whatever was done in the room of flat earth debate belongs to Nathan Oakley, 1980. If that has to be explained, then you're a retard.
They done it in service of Nathan. That's what we're all there for. It was explicitly stated, implicitly conjectured, and pretty much everyone audibleized their understanding while we were in that room.
Yeah, there's going to be an exception to that.
Now
there's
makes
exceptions.
you a liar.
Yeah, well, there's liars. Exactly. There's con men. Basically, what's happened, if you're an audience member and wondering what the bloody hell we're talking about, I was approached by 2 con men who said, "Hey, Nathan, we can help make your book better. We've read through it and we feel it needs better information, better references. We can make it into the ultimate reference guide. We would like to help you feed your family. We can assist you making this better." I thought, oh, that's really nice. It instilled a huge amount of confidence in me. What kind souls to help me better my book. Those same people stole that book and have subsequently published it. Not only published it with the names that I came up with. Yeah? Now that's life. Yeah? D. Rose is good at describing how in the music industry, people stab each other in the back all the time. Yeah? Trying to relinquish other people of their intellectual property. Now there's going to be certain people out there who in certain circumstances, have to defend their use of their own material. But ultimately speaking, no one ever questions how talented Michael Jackson is when he's in a courtroom saying, yeah, of course I wrote this song, and then he starts beatboxing. Everyone's like in awe of Michael Jackson. That doesn't mean that there's not some thieving bastard who's dragged him into a courtroom. That's all it boils down to. People recognise Michael Jackson's talent and wanted a piece of it. Yeah? Wanted to put their veneer on top of it. Wanted to make housekeeping questions about a journey of discovery from a big-footed woman who ends up with cats, instead of it being about Nathan Oakley's show where thousands of repetitions of those questions have come out of these lips. Now, I'm not ever going to need to justify what I do in my book. Absolutely not. What I will do is detail the treachery and the betrayal of people who've decided that they want to thieve from me. Now, those people will inevitably have to, there'll be a necessity to justify what they have produced. Like, make it seem like it's theirs. That will haunt them. Me, I don't have any such problems. Go ahead.
How did they get a copy of your book originally before they told you they would help you out?
I gave it to him.
Okay.
To work on, after being asked.
Yeah.
Can we help you make this better? Yeah, of course you can. What's that? I never even had a book. What, the one that I was being offered help with that ended up being taken ownership by them? Apparently so.
He's been here before. Whoever just spoke, I know the voice. You know exactly what happened. So these questions, I don't know where they're coming from.
I don't recognise.
Well, I'm just wondering how they got a copy of it before they're telling him that, we're going to help you out.
Yeah, I just told you. I gave it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an inference now that it didn't even exist. Yeah, like I never had a book to need helping with. Like I say,
single one of those videos, there was always two books open: the one we were working on, and the one that that we were working from. Right, or drafts open.
Fourth draft and fifth draft. You mean?
Book.
Yeah, fourth and fifth draft.
Yes.
It both had my name on the top of them.
Right.
Every page. Let's just say that once more time in case anybody else out there says that I didn't have a book or that there was two books. Yeah, when MySpace was opened up to people who had offered me assistance to help me feed my family, there were two books on screen. One had Nathan Oakley's name on it, that was the fourth draft, and one had Nathan Oakley's name on it, that was the fifth draft. Just so we're absolutely clear. For anybody who suggests that because they've had their name superimposed on top of mine, it changes how useless they are at keeping a man, comparable to videos made by Taylor the Fiend. No, the story of Nathan Oakley and housekeeping questions will always be my story, no matter how much bullshit you lay down to justify theft. Because that's all it is. Theft. People who offered me assistance conned me. Now, that's my bad. That's an L that I'll have to take, but I'll say it with a smile, because I don't have to justify anything. Very shortly, I'll have my own version of my own story coming out that didn't have any assistive work offered by people who were suggesting they could help me and my daughters survive in a world that's very difficult. Flat Earth YouTubing. That's how it was sold to me by con artists that now say there was no Nathan Oakley book. Really? So when I show pages with Nathan Oakley written on one draft and pages with Nathan Oakley written on the other, that's me not having one. Because my name's been changed to a woman named Betty. That's what's happened. That's what con men do. Confidence tricksters. Now, they've convinced some spinster that my story's her story. It isn't.
See, when the word theft gets used...
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gak.
Yeah, I will.
I was going to say, when the word theft gets used, sometimes you might feel a little empathy because someone, let's say they don't have food and they go steal, right? But I'd say if someone gets something from somebody that belongs to somebody else and tells them you're going to feed your family and they steal that, that's like more of like a scamming. That's like you're more of a scumbag for doing that. There's no justification.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely, yes. That's how I described it too. It's called being a con man. What's the con? Well, the con was I was told I was going to receive assistance, and then that assistance was recorded and documented with constant assurance that I was being helped to feed my family. That same assistance was then purloined by the two con men and then had a thin veneer of a woman's story placed over the top of it. That's what happened. Now, you're saying when somebody's offered you assistance, suggested that they'll give you help for your family, and then stolen the very thing they were offering to help with, that's scummy. Yeah, absolutely correct. Yes. Now, there's a problem with that, which is to say someone like Neil, a very loyal and honest, decent man, sees that happen and turns around to people who offer the thieves support, financial or otherwise, and says, by extension, the company you keep, that's thieves and con men, reflect badly on you. Now, there's been several people who are in my inner circle who've come back to the circle like there's nothing that's happened. No, you're associating yourselves with men who've stolen from me and have made my life and my family's welfare very difficult under the banner of helping me. Now, you can see that however you like. I just see it exactly as it is. I was offered assistance and I was stolen from by the same people who offered it. Now, I can smile about it because I'm not money orientated. Yeah? My desire to keep YouTube subscriber bases high isn't outweighed by the need for truth. My ability to look down this camera barrel and tell you how it is without flinching, how I was stolen from. Now, some people might be embarrassed. When they get conned, it demonstrates their ignorance. My ignorance in this case was to not recognise thieving bastards offering help. That's my bad. That's an L. I've had to humble myself and have some humility. How stupid I was to not recognise these two con men that were just fixing to steal from me when they were telling me they were going to help my family better survive. They didn't. They caused about a 6 to 8 month delay on top of the time that they were alleging to help me. That's probably another 6 to 8 months on top of that. That's what they've done. They've cost me the better part of a year under the banner of helping me.
Whoa, Nathan, you're making it sound like somebody like Jaron or somebody like Bob Nodell offered to help. Somebody you had a casual, maybe you met them and you had a casual acquaintance with. These are people that sat on the freaking panel for years, Nathan. I mean, they offered help. So what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to think like the way you're thinking innocently. These are my friends. They're going to help me. So how you put that on you? I don't understand that. How could you have seen that? Yeah, in hindsight, you can see that, but there's no way you can put that together at the time it was happening.
Oh, well, you should.
I'm sorry.
No, I could disagree. So this is off the back of a similar sort of thing. When I compare the circumstances of some big-footed spinster who can't hold down a man, I'm getting these concepts from people like Taylor the Fiend and Pearl. If you're unfamiliar with Pearl, she's somebody who's been on things like Piers Morgan talking about how women's rights are a joke when it comes to them basically wanting to behave like men and not appreciating what men do in society that keeps women and their lives much easier. Now, hearing that from a woman is quite a difficult pill to swallow when you're watching someone like Pearl. Same goes for Taylor the Fiend. But all of these people are describing the same concept when it comes to women specifically who go after bad boys who are no good for them whilst going on social media and talking about how they want a good man. Like what, lower value, less attractive, less exciting men that you don't end up with. Now, you could argue by the same context that I shouldn't have recognised how friends fuck you over. That's comparable to women who go after the bad boys and then act all shocked and shaken when they don't want to pay child support and don't want to marry them. Well, because they've got loads of options and can go for any woman they like. You, the woman who's being criticised, should have recognised that when you chased after the bad boy. I should have recognised that people offering me an easier ride, that's to say less work, were just fixing to steal from me. They didn't want to help. They wanted to steal. That was me being naive. That's the word. Now, in retrospect, I can recognise my own naivety when it comes to not seeing how friends can very easily steal from you and then lie Nathan didn't even have a book. That's called gaslighting. Who are they gaslighting? You. Me? I went, go away. What's that? You've got my 5th draft and you won't give it back to me. Keep it. All that'll ever happen is already happening. I get endless messages sent to me. Not that I care. Where somebody's saying to the thieves, is this the intellectual property you stole from Nathan Oakley? That will never go away. Ever.
That was yesterday, too, I think. It is true. People are harassing them. Maybe that's why they're giving answers. But anyway, yeah, it was. You could say it was naive, but yeah, and you should have had your antenna up, I guess. But you did in the beginning because you were resisting to help. You were like, I got a book, I'll release it. What the hell's going on? We talked you into it. So it really falls on us. Everybody that was in that room and was saying, yeah, we can make it better, we're responsible too. I'm sorry.
Nobody's responsible. The only people who are responsible are the people who have taken it upon themselves to offer help and then steal from me. There's a couple of individuals. But their penance is twofold. One, what you've stolen will always be labelled as the book you stole, because it is. And number two, you no longer get to be a part of this group. As much as I want to detach myself from flat Earth, which has nothing to do with Earth measurement, this, right now, still is a social circle. Now, while Neil says, but they were sat on the panel for years. What, so they should have a higher degree of trust? They did. That's how they managed to con me. But now they're not. And that's the real punishment. The money that gets developed from the book, the losses that were incurred from having an extra 12 months spent producing material that ultimately got stolen, doesn't alter what we all secretly desire. Social acceptance. Have they received it? No. For one of them, it's multiple times that one of them's been excluded from groups, isn't it? So it's a pattern. Some people are just fundamentally untrustworthy, unlikable, and ultimately get excluded from groups. Now, that person's no different. They ultimately seek social acceptance. They haven't got it. They've been excluded, dismissed, sacked. Nobody likes that feeling. That's the reality. Out of pride, they've decided to rebel and go ahead and produce material that they'll always get called thieves for. That's their punishment. But it ultimately means that the fox has been removed from the hen house. That's all it means. But if you were quite comfortable in the hen house, getting warm and cozy with all the hens, now you're in the dark and now you're hungry. And all you're getting is people scorning you for theft. That's all that's ever going to happen to those two people. They've been excluded from a group that they were socially interacting with on a regular basis and have been deemed thieves and con men as a consequence of their own actions. You have no responsibility in that. Why wouldn't you advise help? That makes perfect sense. If somebody comes along who's trustworthy in a social circle that's built up trust and offers to help me personally, why wouldn't I say yes? Of course. Doesn't mean I shouldn't have had my antenna up. You're right too, Neil. But you don't deserve any blame for encouraging me accept assistance. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't you suggest that was the right move to make? No guilt is ever going to be imparted on anybody who's on the sidelines. After the fact, it's different. Just one last point. After the fact, now, while I can smile and just say, yeah, that book's always going to be tainted, though, isn't it? The one that's got my title and my material and was originally produced in my space with my drafts with my name on both of them. What's that? There was a second book that wasn't mine? I don't really remember talking about Betty and how she can't hold down a man while we spent a year editing my material into a 5th draft format that got stolen. But I mean, obviously you can tell yourself that, but it's just perpetuating the problem for them. It's tainted and always will be. So, let them have it. They're ultimately kicked out. Doesn't matter. Doesn't make any difference to us any further. They were never really our friends, were they?
I guess not. But what I'm saying is we could have got more involved. Like it automatically, like it grown into just Adam and QE taking the lead. And out of respect, we allowed that. I mean, there was a lot of times I wanted to say something. I said, it's Adam and QE. They're doing it. They got Nathan's, they got Nathan's trust and they got good intentions towards him. So we took a back seat and we allowed this to go on. And then we joked around about ghostwriters a little too much. So it was a perfect storm leading to what they did. And we just should have been more aware. I started becoming aware and I stopped joking about the ghostwriter thing because I know that how that could play on somebody's ego. That's all I mean by having some of the responsibility.
Yeah. Well,
I wish I'd have been more vocal in my concerns. So
Exactly.
I feel some responsibility. Because I was concerned about it. About the fourth week into it, I started feeling real weird about the whole thing. So I stopped showing up as much.
What the hell, John?
What?
So it's your fault. Well done.
But yeah, the product now is far superior. The extra revisions, I think it's a much better book.
Oh, yeah.
Worked out better for us. And Karma's already having its effect on one of the thieves. I saw something about someone's kitchen getting ruined and whatnot. Maybe that's just coincidence, or maybe it's karma.
Hey, listen, what goes around comes around. That's a fact. The Bible says what you sow is what you reap.
I don't know about that. It rains on the just and the just alike. So,
Yeah.
But it's not related.
No, but what I'm saying is you can't. Hold on a second. If you're sowing seeds of corn, you're not going to get freaking spinach. So what you sow is what you reap. That's the bottom line. Yes, the sun does shine in the good and the bad.
Yeah, Dan, I know it.
Hey, Oakley.
Yes.
I got to run for a bit, but I was going to say we got to get you on this worldwide debates and some globe discourse to promote your book.
Okay, I covered this in the pre-show just before you disappear. So the last time I went there, some of the participants attempted to have my channel removed. Were you aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So just to put it into metaphor, there's what's the rough part of New York called? Is it the Bronx?
Yeah.
Okay, so you go to the Bronx and you have your trainers stolen, your phone stolen, and your ass kicked. And someone turns around to you and says, you should come down to the Bronx more often. Could you understand why someone would say, no, I'm all right, thanks?
No, I understand what you're saying, and I get you're going to war, but don't worry, you'll be prepared.
I don't need to go to war. There's nothing.
It'll be good for the book.
No, it won't. Going out to people who are pleasant will be good for the book. If you receive an email from me, if you receive my press release that describes the book and says I'd like to talk to you about it, that's generally because I've deemed you a nice person. That's to say I would enjoy spending time in your company. Now, don't get me wrong. 9 times out of 10, those press releases will be met with silence. That is to say the person won't give a toss that I value their time and their opinion because they don't necessarily value mine. But for the 1 in 10 that say, oh yeah, I also would value spending time in your company so that we can discuss this. Now, it might be heated in the discussion, but it'll still be enjoyable for the most part, as was the case with a lot of the servers that I frequented. For the most part, they were pleasant, right up until the point that somebody in those servers decides that I'm a racist because I've said the word nigger, because somebody's played it into my live stream and I've tried to defuse the use of the word by a racist. But by repeating it, I've been deemed racist and banned. At which point you go, okay, I don't want to come back to your server if that's how you want to view me using a word. Not my hatred of black people. There is no hatred. But my use of a word. That means I don't want to be around that person anymore. Likewise, if you were using a word in a public store and suddenly you had handcuffs on you, you'd be like, I don't want to come back to this store again. I've been persecuted for using a word in the English language and now I'm in a police cell. I'm never coming back to this store. So the servers that have been that way inclined aren't necessarily going to be over enthralling me in having that, join them and offer them my time. No thanks. I'd rather spend my time in the company of pleasant people. And most of the servers that I end up not going back to have deemed themselves unworthy of my company. Now you might go, oh, well, how dare you see yourself as so grandiose as to value your own frickin' time? No, I don't want to be around unpleasant people who'd suggest that my kids should be taken away from me, my YouTube channel should be shut down, they should be justified in putting endless complaints in YouTube, maybe making endless bogus copyright strikes against me, maybe playing pornography into my live streams in the hope that I won't be able to feed my kids tomorrow. I'd rather just not be around those people. There are plenty of pleasant people in the world. And if you're one of them,
I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying, like, for the book, like, at the end of the day, who cares if it's a Glober buying it or a flat earther, right? You just want people to buy the book. But, yeah, it's not going to be easy. And I'm not saying these people are pleasant, but, just here and there, like once in a while, going in there,
I have done. I've just explained this. I do go in there once in a while, up until the point that somebody suggests that my career should be relinquished from me. Why would I ever go around those people again? Literally. You give me a justifiable reason why. Somebody who suggested that my YouTube channel, the thing I use to feed my kids, should be taken away from me. Why would I ever spend time in those people's company ever again? Give me one justifiable reason.
Yeah, I guess logically you're right, but
not always about money. Like, I get what you're saying. I'll just lean into what you've said. You've said, right, if I go to these servers, there's a good chance that me telling a group of people whilst broadcasting live that I've got a book called Measured Flat that they can purchase and listen or read about how Earth gets measured flat. And some of them will buy it. Therefore, I'll generate revenue, which will help me feed my kids and pay the mortgage. It's not just about that, though. There are more things to life than money. Being around pleasant people is prioritised by me over and above the money. Having a justifiable reason to get in touch with people with a press release was actually my end goal. So the ends are the ability to say to somebody who I wouldn't have ordinarily contacted, I've got a reason to sit in front of you and talk to you. It's this. Measured Flat. It's a book that I've written about how Earth is actually measured. It's flat. I want to tell you about it because I value your time. I think you're a pleasant person. That's a justifiable reason, even if that particular interaction resulted in no sales. It meant that I had a justifiable excuse to ask the person to spend time in their company. That to me is utterly invaluable, more so than the end result of sales. Just the justifiable reason to contact them and say, I need to talk to you. As we slagged him off in the pre-show, perfect example of this would be Dave Weiss. Very hard-working flat earther, end quote. That's how I describe him in the book, albeit under a fake name. But Dave Weiss is a very hard-working flat earther. He's got a product to sell, his app, and he goes out there religiously and sells it. But because he's got a product to sell, he can put himself in the company of certain YouTubers. He can sell his product. Now, for Mark Sargent, it's a similar sort of thing with his Flat Earth clues. He's got something he can sell. Something he's produced that's available. Now, in the case of Mark Sargent, it's free. In the case of Dave Weiss, there's a ticket value. In the case of me from my book, there'll also be a dollar amount attached to that privilege if you want to take it. But the discussion itself will benefit people when I'm out and about promoting the book. Now, if I'm around people who just say, I want your kids taken away, I want to shut down your channel, I'm going to put in bogus complaints, I'm going to sort you out with a few bogus copyright claims, I'm going to play racial slurs into your video, I'm going to play porno over the sound of Discord while you're broadcasting, I don't want to be around those people. Not at all. It's not worth the few bucks that I'll get out of the few book sales that I'll generate from being in a server like that. It's just, the juice is just not worth the squeeze. That we've done an hour. We didn't cover the video we were going to cover today. We'll have to cover that tomorrow. I did have a video all queued up about distorting globe maps into flat projections, but we'll cover that tomorrow, I believe. For the record, I've suggested to the people who want to get these things off their chest, right? A lot of people feel wronged on my behalf, which is touching, because I've been stolen from. And in the back rooms that are connected to this show, there's people who are, on one hand, uncomfortable with this fact. Someone's stolen from somebody they know, me. And they don't want to discuss it. Others are very vocal about how utterly dismayed they are with the betrayal. Neil's the most vocal of them all. And I had to say to both of them, not two individuals, but both sides of this particular viewpoint, you're both right. I can understand how you don't want to get involved with someone else's theft of someone else's material. Why should you be? And I can totally empathise. It's like, most people don't care. They're apathetic to other people's causes. I totally get it. Why should you concern yourself? On the other hand, there's going to be people who feel that it's an extension of a betrayal of them when they've sat alongside them. And I can totally understand that too. And I've encouraged both. So if you want to detach yourself from an awkward situation because it feels uncomfortable to discuss, then I'm not going to force you to feel like you've got to discuss it. I'm not your mum. I'm not going to give you a moral compass in that regard when we're talking about the absolutes of flat earth measurements. That's the main focus of the show. But along the journey of discovery to reach the absolutes of flat earth measurements, there is always going to be the social interactions and the betrayals. The people who con you and suggest that they're going to help you and then steal from you. And there's going to be people who want to vocalise their, what's the opposite of indifference? Their outrage towards this circumstance. And I'll encourage that too. That's part of what we do here. There's always been an element of that within the social hierarchies and structures that Flat Earth is deemed to be. That's, for the most part, what it's engineered to be, so that we all whistle past Flat Earth measurements. And to suggest that that isn't an aspect of Flat Earth would be a shortfall on my part, to not recognise how things like deceit, things like betrayal, things like theft, in this case, my fifth draft being stolen from me, and having a thin veneer of a woman named Betty being superimposed on top of it. Those are the things that we do actually face in the real world, and they're interesting. You know, admittedly lowbrow. The lowbrow conversation, or the lowest of lowbrow, is to talk about people. To talk about events would be middle of the road. To talk about the concepts and the ideas, that's Flat Earth being a prerequisite in all circumstances. That's the other end of the scale. But the two or three are intertwined. Events, people, and ideas. They're all intertwined. And there's going to be people of the audience that find fascination in all three. Some will only be interested in the people. Some will only be interested in the events. Some will only be interested in the ideas.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would give them a moral compass, because for those that want to turn a blind eye and walk away from it, you just remember that your neighbor's plight will soon be your own. If you don't stand up for what's right when something bad happens, then you have allowed evil to prevail.
Indeed. And on that sombering note, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit me up on PayPal, joined as a Patreon, all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
But when you measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevating flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken, we just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat earth king of rhyme.